Hello, everybody. It's Brian here, and this will be a bit late, but this will be a response to the challenge started by Steve Westman entitled 10 Best Female Vocalists in My Collection. And I'm going to interpret that as meaning the 10 favorite female vocalists in my collection because, after all, it's really subjective, and I'm not sure I could identify the best. I have favorites, of course. So it's going to be favorites. I'm going to focus on vinyl records as opposed to CDs in this particular case. So 10 favorite female vocalists in my record collection. There we go. I wasn't going to do this. First of all, it's 2 months old, I think. But I watched a few people do it. Most notably, recently I watched Jeff, his channel's called J Neb, take a stab at this. So I thought, well, I think that's something I could do. And he did 13, 10 plus 3. So I'm going to do, I think I have 10 plus 4. So I'm going to one-up him on that, and I can't stick to 10. So the first thing to say about this, other than the fact that what I've already said, is that I'm going to eliminate some obvious ones, like, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Nina Simone, those kinds of singers. Obviously great. I obviously like them, but I'm going to leave them out. And then there are a group of artists that I only have CD copies for. Because I'm focusing on records, I'm going to skip people like Cassandra Wilson and Lucinda Williams, people like that. And then there are people who are singers where, I like them, but I'm not sure they'd rise to this group. So I mentioned that because, some people might think, well, where's Sinead O'Connor in this list? And, I do like Sinead O'Connor. Tragic end to her life there, but I only really know the first 2 records. I kind of lost track of her after that, and I like those records, but I don't think she'd make my top 15 or 20. Same is true of someone like Annie Lennox. I love the Eurythmics, but I don't think she'd make it into the list. Obviously she didn't because she's not here. So there's a lot of people like that who I like, but just never made it from my long list of like 30 or 35 down to this list. So having said that, though, I'm going to start with 2 obvious ones, and I'm putting them first. Not that they're in any order. I'm just putting them in first just to get them out of the way, because you might be wondering, where is Kate Bush? So Kate Bush. And this happens just for the show and tell portion. This is the director's cut from 2011, where she reimagined some of her tracks with not altogether successfully, if you ask me. Some of them are okay. And but I think everyone knows the story of Kate Bush, how she started writing music at a young age, like 11 or something, how she was discovered, if we can use that word, by David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, how she released her early record when she was still a teenager, how she was the first, how do you put it, the first woman to have a self-written tune make it to the charts in England, which I find really fascinating. I think it was Wuthering Heights was number 1. Now, I knew her casually, maybe from tracks like Wuthering Heights, but I didn't own any records until I bought The Hounds of Love in the year it came out. Maybe a month or 2 after it came out. I think it was at the end of 85 or towards the end. Well, maybe the last quarter of 85. I bought it sometime then, and I still think it's one of the best records from 1985. I absolutely love that. She has a really interesting voice. Not everyone likes her because there is that quieter, mellower, richer sound that she has when she sings a track like The Sensual World, really wonderful and inviting and warm. And then she has that more abrasive sound. If you think of a track like Sat in Your Lap, which is just coming at you full force, and I think some people don't like that, and that's totally makes sense. I kind of like both aspects of her voice. And I think she's really fantastic. I couldn't possibly make a list of favorite female vocalists and not include her. After I heard The Hounds of Love, I went back and got The Dreaming, which I kind of passed me by, and then the other earlier ones. And, to be honest, to this day, I've liked pretty much everything she's released, with a couple of exceptions. I mean, I'm not thrilled with this record, and The Red Shoes has good and bad points, but I think it's kind of a miss in some respects. Another big name that I pretty much had to include was Sade. This is Sade Adu, Stronger Than Pride from 1988, her 3rd record. She was born in Ethiopia, as I understand it. No, Nigeria. Born in Nigeria. Worked as a model for some time. She's quite, known to be quite beautiful. Has a beautiful voice. Very smooth, soulful sound. I can't think of why anyone would not like her. I think she's kind of has this universal appeal. I'd be interested to know if you don't like her, because her voice is just so inviting. I think she has a really wonderful voice. And that's all I really say about her. She's just, I think, just great. Just a wonderful, warm voice. So, next we have a singer from Canada. This is Feist, Leslie Feist. This is a record called Metals, which is upside down there. And one thing I didn't notice when I first got this is this tree that looks like an F. You can see, I guess this is her lying on this branch. It's kind of funny. She was originally from Halifax. I think her parents were art teachers. She moved to the West at some point. At age 15, she was the lead singer of a Calgary punk band called Placebo, a different Placebo than the band you know. She worked as a bartender in a club in Queen Street in Toronto. She continues to be part of the broken social scene, indie rock collective thing that's happening. Her record music would be in the sort of indie kind of genre, and broken social scene is this large collective of musicians who come together at various times to make music, and she's been a part of that. This is her sixth record. No, sorry, she's released 6 records, has won something like 11 Juno Awards, which are equivalent of the Grammys. Really great voice. I really think her voice is just it's just really rich. I don't know. I just really think it's really nice. There's a song called I think it's called 1 2 3 4 from the Reminder. Did I get that right? It was used in Sesame Street. Really interesting music. But speaking of broken social scene, here we have Emily Haines, who is also a member of that collective, and of course best known perhaps as being lead singer of Metric, that synthy new wave band. But she has this side project called Emily Haines and the Soft Skeleton. This is Knives Don't Have Your Back from 2006. And this is a much different experience than listening to a Metric record. Like the Metric record, you're going to get this kind of inviting, upbeat, poppy new wave sound. This is kind of the opposite. It does have a number of musicians, but it focuses mostly, it seems, on her piano playing. So she plays the piano and she plays these really moody, I have to say slower sounding songs that have a really atmospheric sound. Quite different from Metric, and I remember reading reviews at the time where people were complaining that it doesn't sound like Metric, and I'm thinking, well, why would you want it to sound like Metric? It's a different thing. If you want to get a sense and you don't know it, I would suggest listening to Our Hell and Dr. Blind. Really 2 excellent opening tracks. The Maid Needs a Maid, which I pretty obviously a take on a response to the Neil Young song from the Harvest record. I think this is better than Metric. I think this is a brilliant record, and I just think more people should hear this. It's really incredible. Anyway, that's excellent. She was born in New Delhi, India. Her father's a poet. Can't remember what her mother did. Her sister is Avery Haines, who is a Canadian journalist. So really interesting person. Now, here's someone I didn't like originally, and that is Nico. The first time I heard Nico was on the debut record from the Velvet Underground. The Velvet Underground and Nico, and apparently she was added at the insistence of Andy Warhol. And I think I see what he was going for. I'm not sure when I heard that for the first time, and when I did hear it, of course, I was already familiar with the music of Lou Reed and John Cale. And I actually didn't appreciate her vocals. They seemed, and maybe this is true, they seemed really monotone and maybe monotonous. And I had a hard time reconciling the musical components of Velvet Underground with that voice. But over time, I've come to appreciate it. But for me, the real revelation came with her solo recordings. This is her last one, Camera Obscura. And, you know, if you don't know this, many of her records were produced and arranged by John Cale, which is a not-so-veiled plug at the John Cale series that is ongoing on my channel if you haven't tuned in. So this one's also produced by John Cale. She had a really tragic ending. By the way, her voice, as I mentioned, is very rich and deep and maybe a bit monotone. She plays the harmonium, but what she does with her voice is kind of interesting. She died in, I think it was Spain. She went somewhere on her bicycle and fell off and hit her head, apparently. A taxi cab found her, and the taxi driver took her to some hospitals who would not admit her because this happened on the hottest day of the year, and they assumed that she had some sort of heat stroke. But she died of a cerebral hemorrhage. Now, of course, she was also a model and an actor, and she did write her own songs as well as doing some covers. So my pick from this record is just by coincidence called Win a Few. This is obviously a repressing of this record. Not that it has anything to do with the challenge at hand, but it's on blue vinyl. Really, all of her solo records are amazing. Due in some measure to John Cale. So let's go back to Canada, to someone called Jane Stewart, although she uses the name Jane Siberry. No Borders here from 1984. I think she was born in Toronto. She's sometimes compared with Suzanne Vega, Laura Nyro, and perhaps most appropriately, Laurie Anderson. There is actually a line in a song on The Home of the Brave from Laurie Anderson, in which Laurie Anderson sings, or kind of speaks, "I walked around the corner in Soho today. Someone looked right at me and said, 'Oh no, another Laurie Anderson clone.'" And I have this feeling she wrote it about Jane Siberry, but I could be completely wrong there. It's just that if you listen to Mimi on the Beach on this record, you're going to think of "Oh Superman" from Laurie Anderson. But that's not to say the whole album sounds like that. Waitress certainly doesn't. She has a really intriguing voice. Now, apparently she tried to teach herself, or started to teach herself piano at the age of 4. She learned guitar by going through and learning how to play all the Leonard Cohen songs, which makes her fine in my book. She went to the University of Guelph to study music, but ended up with a degree in microbiology, which I find very interesting. Now, she's released, I think, 16 records. She had a period of time where she was essentially homeless, where she couch surfed, as far as I remember. Very, very interesting. I would say really interesting voice. Like, her voice is kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's just quite different. Well, no, I don't know. I can't describe it. It's good. Here's another obvious one, perhaps the third most obvious one in my list, and that's Amy Winehouse. This is Back to Black, her second record. And when I think about this record, I always think about the fact that, and this might seem weird to say, but if you ask someone, where were you when you heard that Kurt Cobain died, they would remember. Or where were you when you heard about the World Trade Center? Some people may remember where they were when they heard that she died, but I actually remember where I was the first time I heard this record. I heard the CD in a little boombox, and I was immediately totally transfixed. I couldn't believe the sound I was hearing. It had this really soulful kind of R&B sound, but it sounded sort of like the 50s too, really rich. Her voice just seems so, I don't know how to describe her voice, just multifaceted maybe. It was really an intriguing experience. I went back and bought her first record, but I kind of I haven't heard what came after this, those posthumous releases. I haven't heard them, but I think this is really great. Sort of an obvious one, but I think she has such a unique voice. Tragic story, though. And then we have, in the maybe dance house, trip-up, pseudo-hip-hop genre, we have Nina Cherry, who was born in Sweden, which I find interesting. I didn't know that originally. Now, the surname Cherry comes from her stepfather, who was Don Cherry, the famous American jazz trumpeter. This, of course, is well known for the track Buffalo Stance. She doesn't consider herself to be a rap artist. She said she's a singer who can rap. And that kind of makes sense because there is a lot of singing on here. But I listened to this record a lot way back when I got it. I think she's really, really interesting. The first time I heard her, though, was not on this record. It was a duet she did with Matt Johnson of The. So on The second record called Infected, there's a song called Slow Train to Dawn. And she sings a duet with Matt, and there's a video with her in it. So if you want to see that, I encourage you to look on YouTube for that video. It's quite good, and her voice is just beautiful. Really great voice. Next one is the singer of Portishead, whose name is Beth Gibbons. I don't know very much about her, to be honest. This is their third record called Third. They only released 3, plus there was a live album. And this came back way back in 2008. Kind of wish they would do more. And, at some level when I listen to this, I think, it's really difficult to separate or differentiate her voice from the music because they go together so well. But there's something about her delivery, the way she sings, that is really evocative. I've always enjoyed it. I don't have any sort of big answers as to why I like it. She says that she was influenced by Nina Simone and Bono, which I find truly perplexing. But she has a great voice. I've always really liked it. Next, from the Cocteau Twins, Liz Fraser. This is Bluebell Knoll. Again, this is a voice that is just really ethereal, really mysterious in some ways, very calming, I would say. and the music itself just really goes perfectly with it. Now, if you know the Cocteau Twins, and I'm sure many people do, she doesn't really sing lyrics that make any sense. They're sounds or their textures. Someone called it verbalized emotions, which is frustrating. If you want to sing along, you really can't, because I don't know if there's ever been any lyrics written down. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but really intriguing vocals. I was immediately captivated. The first record I heard was actually after this. I heard Heaven or Las Vegas. It was the first one I heard, which just seems like the wrong way. I should have heard the earlier ones first, but I think that was the first one I heard. Anyway, I think this is terrific, and her voice is just so ethereal is the only word I can think of to describe it. And Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees. I mean, her voice, if I had to rank, I didn't rank them, but she would be right near the top because her voice is just so... I struggle with describing how people's voices sound, but first of all, she was very influential, not simply from her voice, but the music that they created. She's operating in that post-punk, gothic, sort of new wave, and massively influential. If you just look at the Wikipedia entry, there's a long 2 or 3 paragraphs about how she influenced various singers. This is Superstition from 1991, obviously a repress on 2 pieces of vinyl, which I picked up because I was never able to find an original of this on vinyl, so this is really excellent. She has such a unique voice. I can't think of anyone else who has a voice quite like hers. Really, really great. This one might be a bit of a left field choice, but this is a band called How to Destroy Angels, and their record Welcome Oblivion. It's a Trent Reznor project with his wife, Mary Queen Mondig, so she sings on this record. Her first record was West Island Girl, which is more of a neo-psychedelia dream pop kind of affair, and this is what is often described as post-industrial music. So that's kind of interesting, but her voice is not like a really powerful voice like Kate Bush or Sinead O'Connor. It's very subtle, but I just always really liked it. Maybe because I think she's really beautiful. So there is that too, but I think this is a really interesting record, and the videos they made are also very interesting. Now they haven't, this is I think the last one from 2013, but they do have something like 5 children now, so I think they're busy with other things. Esperanza Spalding. This is Radio Music Society from 2012. She is a jazz singer and vocalist. And a really interesting music. If you just check out some videos. She either plays a stand-up bass or a more guitar-style bass. It's really interesting to see her sing and play bass at the same time, which I gather is not that simple to do. And I give her credit for having some of the best hair I think I've seen. So she's great. I really think she's a really cool singer. She's got a smooth voice, really excellent. You know, I said a lot about smooth voices, which reminds me that I didn't include like Janis Joplin, who has like the opposite of that, who I really like. But and then lastly, finally at the end, and I didn't think I could make a list without talking about Polly Jean Harvey. This is the Hope 6 Demolition Project from PJ Harvey. The interesting thing about her is that she tries to make every record sound a little bit different, and she often reinvents even the way she looks to look different from record to record. You know, she has a kind of in some cases a rock sound or a punk sound or even a bit of bluesy thing going on. Really inventive, and I've liked most of the things she's done. I'm still thinking about the last album she released, but you know, I think she's actually quite good. So if you don't know her, well, I'm sure you do. Who doesn't know PJ Harvey? Maybe somebody doesn't. That will be my little piece of advice, to listen to PJ Harvey. Anyway, that's my take on favorite female vocalists from my collection, and I'll talk to you in the next video.